Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video, and in this video we're going to be looking at the Tevo Tarantula Pro. So this is an upgraded version of the Tarantula, and also this printer is a kit, so if you like to put printers together, this would be a great option. So in this video we're going to unbox it, assemble it, and do a few prints. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so this is how the Tarantula Pro came in this pretty nice retail box with nice pictures. The top is more of a plain green, but still overall a much nicer presentation than normally. Alright, so let's open it up. I'm definitely excited to see what Tevo has made here. Alright, so there's a lid on top, and here we can see all the pieces to the printer, and there's definitely quite a few of them. Just looking at it, looks like there's definitely going to be a lot of assembly involved. So this piece looks really awesome. I definitely like the green that they chose, quite attractive looking. Alright, so let's pull all the pieces out, and hopefully we'll find some instructions in here. So we do have this Buildtech sticker that'll have to go on the bed. Alright, so lots of parts, guys. Yeah, this is a super involved build. So like I said earlier, if you like building stuff, this kit is definitely for you. Even though there's a lot of building, it's also more rewarding when you build something, because you know, the more you're involved in the printer assembly, the more you can appreciate of how this thing works and all the bits and pieces that go into making a 3D printer functional. Alright, so the parts just don't end, they just keep coming and coming. So it looks like we got more brackets of some sort. So here I see the hot end. That's quite an interesting design. It looks like it has two fans, axial fans on the side. Here we have the heat break with the little fan. Very interesting. Okay, so here we have the extruder, and it looks like one of those Titan style extruder. Very nice. Of course, we do have to connect it to a motor. And speaking of motors, there's 1, 2, 3 right here, and they're RB step motors. And they appear to be 3 identical ones, except for one of them has gear right here, and that gear is for the extruder that'll go on top of it. Alright, so it looks like here we have a few aluminum channels. Looks like a 2020, a 2040, and another 2040, and the last 2020. Alright, so that's everything except for the bed. So let's go ahead and see what this is all about here. Okay, so we do have insulation on the bottom of the bed. That's awesome. I definitely like how they put that on there, because that makes it so much nicer when you have to heat up the bed and it doesn't take forever to do it. So it looks like the bed is separate here with the frame, and then we got a nice little connector here. So far, all the parts are quite nice and feel quite high quality. Alright, so let's see what else we can find in here. Alright, so it looks like we have more pieces down here. So we have another motor and a bracket that looks like it goes with it. More baggies of stuff. By the way, all the baggies are labeled, so that's a plus. So here looks like the power supply, and it is a 24 volt, 8.5 amps. So not a big power supply, but probably plenty for this printer. And they have a nice little cover here with a switch, and it is fused. Underneath the power supply, it looks like we have some test filament, white PLA. Right here, looks like we have the brains of the printer, and actually quite nice. I like how they have everything nicely already put together. Looks like all the wires are labeled where they go. So it looks like the stepper drivers are actually removable, and they're also heat sinked. So the name of the board is called Maker Base. That's the main chip that runs it all. Alright, so it looks like connecting the main wires is pretty easy. Just twist it on there, and I don't think you have to mess too much with the board there. You just have to connect all the wires. So we have a few more things left in the box, and looks like here we have an aluminum trim piece here, and it's green. It's definitely an attractive color. So underneath that we had a little TEVO card, the US power cord, looks like belts, the cable to connect from the printer to the computer, a spatula that's not sharpened. Honestly, I don't even know why they include these anymore. I think most people won't be able to sharpen it anyways. 2 PTFE tubings. Looks like some kind of interconnecting cable. And we do have some more channels here of aluminum. I guess it's a little piece of 2040, and then another bigger piece, and actually 3 of these. And in one of those looks like we have the lead screw. and that's for the Z-axis. All right, so that looks like pretty much everything. There should be maybe something in here. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I was wondering where that was. So this is the main control unit here with the screen and also the SD slot, and it is a full SD card. And this also says maker base on the back of it. So one thing that's definitely missing is the assembly instructions. And I'm guessing that's probably included on the SD card. But honestly, I would prefer an actual paper that was in the box, because that would have made it a lot more friendly and more convenient than having to go look it up now. In any case, so that's everything for the box. And now we have a pile of parts, and I'm going to try to organize this and find some instructions, and we'll get started to put this thing together. Alright, so I started laying all the parts out, and I realized that I think I'm going to need a little bit more room. And looking at all these baggies of parts also made me realize that even though there's a bunch of them, they all seem to be labeled in the correct order of the assembly process. So I'm going to move everything out of the way, and we'll just start from 1 and then continue. So I did find an assembly manual online, and I will have the PDF link in the description below, so check that out. So this is going to guide us step by step. So on the first one, you guys can see that this is A01, and it tells us what pieces to put together. So yeah, go ahead and download the PDF and just follow along as I build this, and hopefully we can get this thing together here. For the first part, we're going to need 2 channels, and they look like this. There's 2 holes here on the end of it, and then on the side there's 2 holes drilled there. So 2 of them look like exactly the same. 2040 by 350 millimeters, and then we have another one that's 2040 that's 250 millimeters, which looks like this, but the only part that's different on the manual is doesn't have this hole here. So I'm not sure exactly where I should put it, but I guess I just will randomly choose and just put it either way, and hopefully that'll be okay. So everything for step 1 we should have in this baggie here. So let's go ahead and see what's in here. And also looks like we have the feet here too. Right now what we're looking for is 4 of these longer bolts, and these are going to go through the sides and tighten these 2 together to the middle. So we are going to need tools. There's a little baggie for that, and we got little zip ties in here, tiny little flat screwdriver, an SD card that's not even a gig, 512 MB, some Allen wrenches, and a little wrench to adjust our eccentric nuts. So we're gonna, tighten these up just a little bit, but don't make them too tight yet, because there's probably going to be some adjusting needing to happen with flex. So that part is done. All right, so for the next part, we're gonna be doing feet. And this is not too hard, and it comes with pretty tall rubber feet here. So we're gonna grab the bolts that are the more chrome shiny one and put them through the feet like that. And at the end of that, we're gonna put a little T-nut. And you just wanna barely start it. And this is the way it should be going on there. So it's quite simple how these go on. So the T-nut goes into the channel, into the groove, and then you're going to start spinning this, and then as you spin it, the T-nut should turn and lock into the channel. Well, actually I put this one on the wrong one. The front feet go on this side of the channel to the outside, and the back ones go to the inside of the channel for some reason. All right, and this is what it should look like. So we got these feet on the outside of the channel and these on the inside. So for the next piece, we're gonna have this extrusion here that's quite long. This one's a little bit more important of how you put it, because if you can see on one end here, there's no wallowed out little parts in the channel, but on this side there are. So let's flip this guy around like this. And so the little wallowed out area is gonna go to the top. And then we're gonna grab the 4 black bolts. We're gonna put the lock washers through them. And then we're simply just gonna screw the bolts into the other piece. So this channel moves quite easily and quite a lot, as you can see. So try to, eyeball it parallel with these 2 beams here, because this is where the bed will be connecting to. So it'll be running, true, not sideways. So if you want to maybe measure it out to help you, you can do that. So once I get it close enough, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these. And that's it for this part. Now, the only thing I forgot to do was I forgot to put these little lock washers in the side bolts here. So I'm going to go ahead and take them out, since I didn't even tighten them yet. And it won't take me long to just put the lock washer through there and run them back in. So I'm going to do that right quick to these, and then we'll go to the next step. So if you're happy with how everything looks, you can go ahead, if you're on a really nice flat table, make sure it's sitting good. You can go ahead and tighten these bolts, and you probably could have went ahead and tightened them before, because I don't think this is going to matter too much going forward here. And for the next step, we're not going to need this frame at the moment, so I'm going to move it out of the way. So step number A2 is going to be putting the control board or the controller there, the screen, to this fascia. So it looks like we have quite a few little pieces there. So there is a little protector on the screen, so we might as well go ahead and take it off so it won't be hard to do it later. And we also need to take this knob off, so it should just pull right off, I think. So there's quite a few pieces that require to put this on here. So we're going to need a little extension here. Hopefully you guys can see that, everything's so tiny. And what we're going to do, there's 4 holes around here, and the extension is going to go to the front, and then a really tiny little black bolt is going to go on the back of the board, and then we're going to tighten this little extension adapter on it. So hopefully you guys can see that right there, just like that. And we're going to do all 4 corners. And so after that, naturally we're going to need to get a wrench and tighten all this up. You know, it doesn't have to be crazy tight, just, you know, a little bit so it doesn't come loose, just like that. So now we can line this up with the front fascia here, and we can see that we have the 4 holes here for the black little tiny bolts that'll hold the whole thing to the front. So this is a little bit tedious because it's all so small, and this is what we should look like. And now we can go ahead and just press our knob back on, but don't press it too far down inside there. It still needs to be pushed. So the rest of this hardware here, we just need to start here on both ends of this fascia here. So just like that, and that is it. So we're done with this step. Let's go to the next one. So our next step is 3, and this is the Y motor assembly, I guess. So there's a bracket here, and then we got quite a few parts here. The gear, another bracket here, and this maybe is like the tensioner. We also have some spacers, and also looks like an idler pulley that we will need to install also. We're gonna start off with the motor facing this way, the connector, and then our bracket goes just like this. So the 2 holes here, or the extra hole here, goes to the front of the plug here. So the bolts that tighten up are the really small ones that have the little mushroom head on it, and there are 4 of them. All right, so this is what it looks like. And then our little sprocket here will go on top, and on the shaft of the motor here, there's 1 flat area, and you want one of the set screws on the sprocket line up with the flat part of the shaft. So for now, don't worry about it too much where it's at, because you're definitely going to have to adjust all this once we get the belt on there and we start moving it around. So the only thing we have left to do with this assembly here is just put 3 bolts through these holes and add the T-nuts to them on the back. So I think this is done now. All right, and so on this idler pulley facing this way, well, I guess let's go ahead and start with the long bolt here. So it looks like we're gonna put in both of our little bearings here, and then we have a spacer, aluminum spacer, and then we're gonna put it through the bracket and grab the locking nut. So the only issue here is that they didn't include anything to hold this nut with, so you're gonna have to get some kind of pliers or a wrench in. And so for the next part, we're just gonna put the 2 bolts through the holes here, and this is gonna be our mounting bolt, and then 2 T-nuts on the back, just like that, and we are done with this. So we're slowly making progress. Let's go to the next step. So the next step is a B02 bag, and that is the bed frame here, installing all the rollers to it. So this is going to be quite simple. We're just going to grab a bolt and then start a wheel on it. So we're going to have 2 of them with eccentric nuts, and 2 which will be adjustable, and 2 that are not. So the one with eccentric nuts, you're going to be using this little brass washer. So that'll go next to the wheel. And so then we're going to grab our eccentric nut, and the reason it's called like that, hopefully you guys can see that, is because it's offset. So whenever you turn it, it's going to get, you know, it's going to wobble like this. And that's what makes our adjustment. So they want our eccentric nuts to go to the side where these 2 brackets are right here sticking up. So one's going to go here, and then the other one down here. So on the other end, we're just going to grab a locking nut and start that on there. So the other wheels are quite simple, same way, but instead of the eccentric nut, you're just going to put this aluminum spacer on there, put it in, and tighten it up. All right, so all the wheels are on. Now I need to just tighten them up, and we should be done with this part. All right, so now that we've got this built and nice and tight, so the next part is actually putting it on the frame. Now be careful to orientate this correctly, because in the manual they flip this back around backwards here, and I'm guessing this is the back, or maybe this is the front and that's the back, but in any case it's the shorter ends here. So if we look at the bed frame here, we can see there's 2 little tabs here, and this is where our belt will connect to, just like that. So we should be able to just roll this thing on there, and it looks like it does need somewhat adjustment. So then we're going to take our idler pulley that we built, and we're going to install that in the front here, or the other end here that's longer, it sticks out, and that simply is just going to go right there. So don't worry about it too much about where it goes, because we're going to have to adjust this when we put our belt on. Yeah, simple as that. So we got our bed frame on, and we got this adjuster pulley on. So you are going to want to adjust your eccentric nuts, which are over here. And the way that works basically is you want the wheels to be pushing against the channel just barely. Now if you tighten them too hard where they squish, you're going to start wearing out those little wheels there, and you know, they're going to degrade really fast. So this is kind of, you know, a little bit of a learning curve, but one of the ways that I know the adjustment is good is that, you know, if you can grab a wheel and turn it and it kind of spins around, that means it's okay, like it's not too hard to spin. So the easier it is to spin and there's no wobble, the better it is. All right, so for the next part, we're going to be installing Y-axis motor, and this simply just goes on the other end right over here. And so that just goes underneath, and then the belt will go from the bed here around this pulley, and then all the way around this idler pulley, and then back to the bed. Let's go ahead and flip this around so it's easier. So this thing here, we'll just flush with the end and tighten it right here. And then all our adjustments can be made on that idler pulley up front. All right, so the motor's on. So for the next part, we're gonna be installing our belt. And that's not too difficult. If you can see here that the belt starts from one end here, goes around, and then goes around this sprocket here, and then back to the bed. Simple as that. And so you're just gonna use the provided little zip ties. All we're gonna do is we're just gonna make a little loop and then zip tie it right there so it holds itself. Just like that, hopefully you can see that. So just a little loop with the teeth towards each other, and that's it. So now we can loop it around. So this side's gonna go around the pulley and then all the way to the idler pulley and then back to the bed. Now your belt is going to be longer because I already pre-cut mine. So once you get it through the little bracket here, you know, you can cut off the rest. But another thing to note here is you might want to loosen this pulley, you know, where you have about ½ an inch or so from the edge. So later when we go to adjust it, we can, you know, tighten it up. We have some room to tighten it. So yeah, even though this process seems a little complicated, it's quite, you know, straightforward. All right, so now that we have the belt connected on each end and it loops around where it needs to go, we can go ahead and stretch out this pulley, and it looks like we're just about right here. So you don't want to make this belt too tight, but just like a little bit of tension, not like where you can play music on it, you know, that's way too tight. It doesn't need to be that tight. All right, so I think I'm pretty happy with it there, and that's it. We have our belt on. So check your belt, make sure, you know, your pulleys are running good. And also over here on the motor, since we didn't tighten this earlier, we need to go ahead and check, make sure everything's good. So it looks like mine ended up being just right, and it looks like I don't even need to really adjust anything. So we can go ahead and tighten the sprocket really good. That way we're done with everything. So as you go and build, you know, keep checking everything, making sure everything is working together good, because it's all going to depend, you know, how well the printer is going to function. So we need to flip this thing around. Let's see, like this, I think. So our next step is the control board assembly here. So, and this goes somewhere over here. So we're gonna have a bolt that goes right there in that hole with a T-nut into the rail, and then there's two more bolts that'll screw into the end here of that channel. So the assembly manual doesn't specify which baggie, so I'm guessing maybe this is the extra baggie that says gift on it. So I'm gonna put a bolt and a T-nut over here in this corner. And then it's calling for two low profile bolts that I guess maybe these will work, those in that same baggie. So should be simple enough here. Should be pretty good. Everything seems to be lining up quite well. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these up all the way. Now you might have to loosen these bolts here on the sides, because I had to, because it seemed like my control box here was kind of making, or at least it wasn't lining up with the frame here. So I had to loosen up all these bolts to get it straight again. So yeah, always know that, you know, you got to keep adjusting, always. So now it looks like everything feels really good. I think our next step is the power supply, which is right here, and we can go ahead and look at it a little bit closer. So it is a 24 volt, 8.5 amps. And it doesn't look like, not that I can see here around it, that there's any kind of switch to 110. So hopefully it's already set up to that voltage, because on the sticker here it says it can do both 110 and 220. All right, so the power supply theoretically goes somewhere around here. I guess we do need to flip this around back over here, right here, just like that. So we're gonna have 3 bolts here on the top of the channel with T-nuts on the bottom. So I need to find the baggies for this supply here. And I think I actually found it because this is exactly what the picture shows here. So it's A04, and I'm kind of confused why they don't have that labeled on the manual. In any case, I guess whatever's extra from here we'll just put back in the gift bag, the extra bag. So all right, so we got 1, 2, 3 bolts there, just like that. And now we're just gonna tighten them up. And I guess that's how it goes, even though it's still kind of wobbling around in there. So all right, so according to the manual, apparently we're done with that. So I mean, not too excited about that, but I guess it doesn't really matter too much. So the next part is actually the front fascia that we built earlier, and it simply just goes on the front here. And so our little T-nuts will slide onto the side of the channel on both sides, and then we just have to tighten them up. So we're just butting against this channel here. That seems to be right where it needs to be. All right, so it's starting to look like we really have something here, like a base. All right, so let's continue our build, and the next step is actually installing the heated bed. And I love how they got an insulation here on the back of the bed. That's really nice because that's gonna make up heating really fast and just a better experience overall. So we're gonna be using the baggie labeled B02-1. And here we have all the parts that we need to install our bed, which is actually quite simple. And by the way, these knobs are 3D printed, but they're nice and large, and they got a pretty cool design to them. So we got 4 knobs, 4 bolts, and 4 springs. We're gonna start off with putting the bolts through the bed. Then after that, we're gonna put the spring underneath and then find the hole here. And obviously your wire goes to the back. So I do the one side, the front here, and then I'll do the back, just like that. So now our bed is on and it's sitting on springs to the frame. And now we're just simply gonna take these knobs here and we're gonna screw them on the bottom of the bolt. All right, so when you put on your knobs, it'll look something like that. You can go ahead and compress the bed a bit, but we'll have to, you know, obviously adjust all that when we get to the end, when we start adjusting the level. All right, so for now we're done with this bottom assembly, and we're just gonna put it out of the way. All right, so the next thing we're gonna be working on is the X-axis assembly, and we're gonna need this B-03 baggie. So we got quite a few little pieces there. So it looks like we're gonna need this piece here, and also this piece, and also a 20/20 channel with the 2 holes here on each end. Well, actually, we don't need this piece yet. I guess this is for the next part. The first thing we need to do is we need to install this little brass bushing, and this is where the lead screw goes. The brass bushing goes underneath, not like how I put it there. This way, underneath. So we are going to need 4 of these little chrome bolts, and we're going to put lock washers. Really tiny little lock washers. You know, we're going to put the little bolts on top like that. And there's 4 of them that go around here. And then there's these little tiny nuts that'll go on the other side. So this is definitely a little bit of a tedious procedure because, you know, everything is so tiny. So it should look something like this with all the bolts and nuts. Now you do want to tighten this obviously, but I suggest not tighten this hard. So right when the lock washer starts to, you know, compress, don't tighten it more than that for every single one of them. Now the reason for that is because a lot of times the lead screw actually needs some flexing, and so you're better off if this brass bushing here can slightly move around, you know, if it's forced. Like right now I can move it side to side if I force it, you know, just a little bit, but it does. All right, so for the next part, we're gonna grab the 20/20. There's 2 little spacers here, aluminum spacers, and we're simply just gonna go over that, just like that. They're actually nuts here. And then we're gonna grab the 2 bolts that were in this baggie here, just like that. So pretty simple. But I did forget again to put the lock washers in here, so I'm gonna take it out and do that. Now we're definitely good. So for the next part, actually skips all this hardware here and goes to another project. So we're just gonna move this to the side, which will require 2 baggies, B04 and B04-1. And that's actually quite a few parts here. And this is the bracket we'll be working with. So this is the hot end will connect and the heat break and all that stuff. So, all right, so if we turn our bracket this way, we're gonna work from this side out. So the bottom hole here is the one that's gonna have the eccentric nut, and then the other 2 are just the solid wheels. So it's pretty much the same procedure. We're gonna grab a wheel and a bolt, So for the eccentric nut, we need the little tiny brass washer, and then the eccentric nut itself. And then we can go into the frame, into this hole, just like that, and then put a locking nut on the other end. So same thing we did earlier to the bed, not too complicated here. So all right, so for the next step is when we're going to need this piece, and the way this goes is like this, and we're going to have an eccentric nut over here, and then the two solid wheels here. So we keep having little leftovers that I'm guessing we're going to need as we go. So yeah guys, same thing, the eccentric nut will need the brass fitting. So now we're going to tighten everything. All right, so for the next part, we're going to grab this longer chrome bolt, building the idler pulley. So we're going to put the bearings in like this, and then we just need a spacer, and that hole right in the middle is where that will go. And we also got a little nut back here to lock everything in. So that's what it'll look like right there. So now we're going to take X-axis assembly here that we put together earlier, and with it facing like this up, this bracket here will go like this. And we are going to use 2 bolts and T-nuts. So we can either simply slide into here, maybe it'll be easier. But in any case, we're going to end up with something like this here. So at this point, I'm not sure exactly how far they need to be between each other. So we're definitely going to have to adjust that because our main beams that go up and down will have to go through here. So I'm just going to snug them up so it's holding it. And when the time comes, we'll loosen this and we'll adjust it to this side, you know, according to need to go farther or closer. And so we also need to put the hot end cradle here onto this assembly. And we're just simply going to roll it into here from this end here. So perfect in there, so we'll have to adjust it, but we're going to do that later. So for now, we're just going to leave it alone. And that is it for this part of the assembly. So for the next part, we're going to move this out of the way and bring our main base back in here. And we're going to grab our baggie with the B01. And what we're going to be doing is installing the 2 channels that go here on each side. They go up. So they appear to be both the same and there's no difference to them. So let's grab our bolts. So there are washers with them. So put the washers in the bolts. All right, and so this is quite a simple process. We're just going to grab a channel and there's 2 holes here. And you're going to grab a bolt and then start it onto the channel. And so there are 2 bolts on each side. So we are definitely not tightening these bolts up. We're just barely snugging them up because they will need to move as we continue to assemble. So yeah, exactly same for this side also. All right, so both of them are on. So after looking at the next steps, I realized that the instructions are actually missing quite a few bits of information. Now they're assuming that, you know, you're just gonna put things together. So like number 1, that this thing still needs to go over these channels here. Not even that, they already have everything assembled, like the motor and the pictures after that. So it's kind of unfortunate that the assembly manual is not as complete as it needs to be. But in any case, I think we can figure this out. So we know that the extruder goes here, and that's this motor here with the sprocket, and it'll simply go around just like that. And I'm just going to make the wiring go out to the back, or maybe we can make it this way. I think it's going to be plenty of room like that. So yeah, we'll make the wiring go this way. In any case, so then we do have this extruder assembly here, the gearing part of it, and it also needs to go on there, and that goes something like that, I'm pretty sure. So this is your output. It's obviously going to go this way. Now on this extruder here, there's 1 bolt, which is this corner right here, that needs to be a small bolt. So we're just going to go ahead and put that in there, and we need to tighten this because we can't get to it later. And so now we can put this part on there, and then grab the long bolts that we have laying around over there, and that should technically do it for the other 3, which is going to clamp the motor and this gearing together. All right, and it should look something like this. So not too complicated to figure out. So we also have another stepper motor that goes right here, and there are 2 more left, and they're both identically the same, so it doesn't matter which one. But this motor goes here just like that with the plug out. And you can see that this motor also acts like a tensioner for the belt. So we're going to have to be pretty precise of how we put the belt on because we have such a little play here. So yeah, we just need 4 little tiny bolts. And just like that, we have the X-axis motor on. And also we can go ahead and start this gear on there, and we'll adjust that when we need to. All right, so the next step, I feel like I need to do this because they're telling me to put on the frame and everything, but I feel like the Z-axis motor needs to go in next. So let's go ahead and do that. It's a B07, and so we're gonna need our motor. So we have the lead screw coupler, and that's going to go on the motor, and the other end is going to go into the rod here. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this coupler. Again, use the flat side of the shaft for one of the set screws. And we're probably safe to go ahead and just tighten that. Well, actually it's going to need a much bigger gap than that, because if you look inside there, our shaft is sticking too high up. It needs to be about halfway or so, because you want your lead screw also to have enough room to go in there to about the middle. And they do include a little O-ring that they want you to put right inside that hole there. So just drop it in there and make sure it's laying flat. And I guess that's to prevent the lead screw and the shaft there touching each other and making noises. All right, so the next part is quite simple. We have this little bracket here, and that's what's going to mount to the channel. So let's start some bolts in there with some T-nuts, just like that. And then this part will go straight to the back of the motor. And then there's two smaller screws that go through it, and surprisingly those are actually Phillips. Let's see this screwdriver they included, if it'll work. Okay, all right, well that was a little random because of these are being Phillips, but you might have to get your screwdriver out and tighten that up nicely. So yeah, the next part is quite simple. The little T-nuts will go into the channel here, just like that, and then we're gonna snug it up, and that should be good right there. All right, so now we can take our whole assembly and put it down into the channels, just like that. So it looks like it fit. So it appears to be that somehow, with some luck, it looks like I got this bracket just right, where it looks like it's exactly where it needs to be, because if it goes all the way to the bottom, you can tell here the right distance between the two. So it looks like it's pretty close, and it looks like it's going to work there. So the next thing we need to do is go ahead and box in the top with this 2020 channel. So on this channel, you can see there's two holes on each side, and one side is wallowed out and the other is not. So the part that's wallowed out goes to the top, which is for the bolts. So we still have the 4 bolts from earlier when we put in these. So yeah, we're just going to simply start the bolts in here. And so before you tighten the top here, the top bolts all the way, what you want to do is you want to bring this up all the way here, because what it's doing is giving you a reference, you know, where it needs to be. So now we can tighten this all the way, knowing that when this goes up here, it's going to be perfect. So we're good, nice and smooth here, and all the way to the bottom. So we are still going to need to adjust a little bit over here on these wheels. It's not completely perfect, but that was done with these eccentric nuts. You know, you can loosen it and tighten it a bit. So it looks like we need to be tightened just a little bit. All right, so now we can grab our lead screw, thread it right into that bushing there, and it is going to go straight into this coupler here. We need to loosen these set screws a bit. Okay, so there we go. So we put that little rubber O-ring in there. A lead screw is actually sitting on it, and so that's good where it is. So now we can just tighten this, and that's it. We have connected the Z-axis function here. So, and just by moving it, I can hear that this rod is dry. So we're gonna have to get some kind of grease somewhere and grease it up before we use it. All right, so the next step is a baggie called B04-2. So this is basically a guide for the lead screw here for the top. And basically, essentially, all it is a little bracket that has a bearing that goes into it like that, which goes over the lead screw. And all that does, it just helps guide the lead screw from, you know, flopping around too much. And so they have 2 bolts here that you can run down in there so your bearing doesn't move around. You kind of have to force these in there. There's no threads. So this is just for the sole purpose so this bearing doesn't fly out of there. So then we're going to put our bolts in and the T-nuts on the other side, and all this stuff should just pop right in here. And I'm going to go ahead and run this guy all the way up there. I'll make sure we're pretty good up here. Looks to be just right where it's at. All right, so we're just going to snug it up, and we are done here. All right, guys, so now we also need to tighten the bolts underneath the 2 main frames here. So now that this thing is all the way down, it should be sitting exactly where it's at. So if you have to loosen these bolts and then tighten them up again. So once you get everything tight, make sure all your wheels here are nice and adjusted. You want them to spin easily, but with some friction. But you can kind of feel it all, how it's adjusted, by just spinning them around. So if there's any kind of play in there, obviously you need to be a little tighter. Now if they're really hard to spin, that means you're way too tight. So all right, so it looks like we're making pretty good progress. So for the next part, we're going to be installing this belt, which is our X-axis movement here. So this is going to be very similar to what we did on the Y-axis. The only difference here is that instead of a hole, we have actually a slot. So we can go ahead and pre-make the loop here just like that. Clip the extra off. And so how the belt installs is slide it into the little bracket here with the teeth up. And this is the part that's a little bit tricky here, but the long part of the slack actually goes inside the frame all the way here and then around the gear on the top and back over here. But once we get that close, we're gonna go ahead and clamp this. I'm gonna try it out, see how that feels. It is a little bit loose, but you know, we can tighten it obviously here a little bit, and we can go ahead and cut the belt. So make sure you know that everything is good before you cut the belt. You can't make the belt longer. So there's a couple more things we need to do. We need to tighten the belt, and we also need to adjust the gear pulley. So we're gonna loosen the 4 little bolts. Then we're just gonna hand tighten it by pulling on it this way. Maybe it's too tight, but it's actually pretty good, seems like. Once you got the tightness pretty good, you can go ahead and tighten these little bolts back up. And then we're just gonna run it around, and we're gonna look over here how the belt is reacting. So far it looks really good. So it looks like it could come out just a little bit. And as simple as that, guys, our belt is on. So it starts from one end, goes around the sprocket pulley, then goes inside the channel behind this wheel on the top. So you have to kind of go around the wheel through here around this idler pulley, then back to the other end. So this might be a good time to go ahead and adjust this cradle to where you want it to be. So everything is really smooth and feels really good. So I'm happy with where that is. All right, so for the next part, I think we can go ahead and install our hot end assembly here. So this looks like it's pretty much all ready to go. Just need to be a little bit careful with the wires here. So the way this thing mounts is actually on this bracket here. So the bracket will go like this, and the bracket will go over on the top here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts through there. So all right, so we're gonna use these little chrome bolts here. And I'm sorry guys for, you know, not being more consistent with what bolt it is and things like that, but I mean, all this stuff is pretty, you know, I guess logical as you go. So all right, that looks pretty good. So now we're gonna grab our hot end assembly here right on the top. So make sure all your little wires here are, you know, not being pinched or anything and are protected. So we're just gonna use these little black bolts, 4 of them. So if you don't have enough bolts or missing some bolts, you know, you can use this little gift packet for extra parts. That should be good right there. And believe it or not, this is where the manual ends. So it's kind of crazy because the rest you kind of just have to figure it out yourself. So obviously we haven't plugged anything in, and also we actually have not installed any of the end stop switches. And the reason I haven't installed them yet is because they just randomly appeared in different pictures without really explaining what goes where. So we should definitely work on that next, on these end stop switches. And then it looks like we just need to connect all the wiring, the PTFE tubing, and it looks like we're getting really close to being done. So the end stop switches come with little acrylic cutout little brackets, and there's a little protective, okay, yeah, there's a coat on it that we need to peel off so it looks nicer. So the first one we're gonna do is the Z-axis, and that's gonna go on right here. So we're gonna grab a bracket that looks like this, and then one of the switches, and I think all the switches are the same. Yeah, they do appear to be all the same. They include these little screws here that will go through the switch into the bracket. So this is what it'll look like, 2 screws here holding the switch to the bracket. And then we're going to use a bolt to go through this slot down there and put a little T-nut on the other side. And then we're going to put it on the channel, and somewhere on here we're going to mount it. Now the best way I found to do this is compress the bed springs about halfway on the bed, maybe a little more, and then run the Z-axis down to the switch. Now watch where you are on the bed here, so get it really close to the nozzle here. And so whenever the nozzle almost touches the bed, like barely, like a hair, now we can adjust the switch all the way up, maybe just a fuzz lower right here. And so be careful when you tighten this bolt, do not over tighten it. It will crack that, and then, you know, you're going to be in trouble. So yeah, so this is our Z-axis switch. So the next one we're going to do is the X-axis switch, and that's going to go right here. So same thing here, with it facing like this, the switch will go just like that. So now we're gonna have to take off these 2 little bolts from the motor, and they are too short, so I'm gonna have to find some longer ones, which there are a couple in the spare baggie. All right, so now that we have longer bolts, should fit really good. So let's see if it works. And it does work perfect. It gets to it and clicks it. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this up really good. But remember guys, because it's acrylic, not too hard. All right, we got our X and our Z end stop switches on. Now we have one more in the back somewhere back here. The Y-axis end stop will go. So I think this one is also quite simple. We're just gonna go right here somewhere, and we just need to figure out how far it needs to be. So basically the bed hits metal. So right when it hits metal, I would say go just a little bit forward, and that's where the switch needs to be. So the part that actually triggers the switch is one of the wheels from the bed. All right guys, and that's all the in switches, so that wasn't too hard. All right, so we've gone this far and there's actually no more help from the manual at all. We still have to plug in all our wiring, which, you know, we're gonna have to figure out where everything goes. We do have this little cable, and I think this is from the screen here to the probably motherboard somewhere. And to be honest, I don't understand why it would have been hard to even include a sheet of paper that at least, you know, breaks down of where things plug in, or, you know, at least where things are. I know if you've been messing around with printers all your life, this probably is not a big deal. But for people that are just getting into it and want to have a nice little project like this to put something together, you know, this is a little bit discouraging because you have no direction. Now, with that said, there might be something on this SD card that, you know, could help. So I haven't looked at it yet. I'm just trying to build it from the point of view of just unboxing it and putting it together. So, and even still, you know, we still had to go online to find a PDF to how to put this thing together, which is not complete either. In any case, we'll just continue with our mission here, and it looks like there's 2 wires, and I wonder why there's 2. That's kind of strange. So let's flip this printer around, and here we have a bundle of wires that are actually all labeled. So maybe, or most of them looks like are labeled, maybe, just maybe, this is not that big of a deal as it seems. So we have Z-axis switch goes up here, Y-axis switch, which is not in this direction at all, it's on the other side. So, you know, they just have all these bundled together, but it's not even going to the right place. So now I'm gonna have to cut this bundle so I can release the Y-axis switch here, and the rest of them looks like will just go up here and won't be an issue, seems like. So we'll send our Y wire here, and then our Y switch. So the power cable from the power supply is right here, and the other end goes through here for some reason. So I guess they need to be on the outside. So let's go ahead and plug that in. We'll just tuck it in here for now maybe, but probably need to zip tie all this stuff so it doesn't move around. And if we go here to the very back, we can see we have 1, 2, 3 screw-on plugs here. So one of them is to the bed, and the good part about these is that they're all different, so you can't mix that up. So that's a plus there. So the one in the bed looks like it's the one over here. It's a larger one, so we can go ahead and plug that in, tighten it up. And then we got the plug from the hot end, and that one looks like it's in the middle here. All right, now that wasn't too hard. And I'm guessing this third one here is for some other option. I guess this printer doesn't have whatever option this is. So while we're back here, let's go ahead and connect the Y-axis switch here. And the cable does have a Y on it. And the switches are the ones that are smaller with 3 wires, and the motors are larger with 4 wires. So while we're under here, we can go ahead, hook up our Y motor right here. Simple enough. So it looks like we just need to grab a zip tie and kind of zip tie all these loose wires together here. All right, so that looks pretty good right there. So maybe this won't be as hard as we think. It is a little confusing. Now the part that's definitely confusing is that the display here has 2 plug ports that you can plug into. And there are 2 wires included. I'm guessing we have to use both of them in order for the display to work. And on our main board here, there's 1 and 2 plugs here. They do say EXP1 and EXP2. EXP1 is this wire towards this side, and then EXP2 will go beside that. So it looks like we need to do a little bit more zip tying here. All right, and I think that should be maybe okay. All right, so I think underneath here we're pretty much done. So let's go ahead and flip this thing on its side. We do have quite a few wires here, but they're all labeled. So let's find our Z-axis switch, which is this one right here, labeled Z. Plug that in. And then we have our Z-axis motor here, which now that I'm thinking might have been better if we moved it where the plug is pointing to the side here, because this thing would have been perfect, but it's not a big deal. It also reaches just like that. So here we have the X-axis motor, and then we have the X-axis end stop switch, which is over here, and just like that. And then we have quite a long wire that goes to the extruder motor, which is right over here. So yeah, pretty much I think we've plugged everything in. So surprisingly, that wasn't too hard. It's pretty straightforward. It was definitely a little easier than I thought. I guess because there was no instructions, I was being a little bit overwhelmed of what goes where, but once you start messing with it, it all kind of made sense. All right, well, we definitely need to organize our wires a little bit, but before we do that, let's go ahead and put in our PTFE tubing. So this printer came with 2 of them, I guess an extra one. We're just gonna use one, obviously. So I think we're just, okay. So this PTFE tubing actually goes really far down in there. So I don't know if this is going to be good right there or not. So hopefully it is. And then the other end is just going to go right here into our extruder assembly. Just like that. Quite easy and simple. We got our tubing on. And now what we need to do is we need to zip tie all these wires together so it looks nice and neat and nothing gets tangled or in the way of these wheels. So yeah, it's probably a good idea, you know, to spend some time and organize all these wiring. It looks neat and also will not be in the way of other moving parts and stuff like that. So, all right, so I think I'm pretty happy with that there. All right, so far so good. We got this good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and play with these wires a bit, maybe organize them. You wanna run the Z-axis all the way up so you can see, you know, that make sure everything reaches before you tidy them up. Because, you know, if you bind them in certain places, they might not reach once it goes all the way up. So also, don't forget to maybe put some grease on this lead screw here. So if you don't have any kind of grease, you know, just put some kind of oil on it. So anything, you know, that can lubricate it. All right, guys, so we're getting really close to getting this thing going. So the next thing we need to do is we need to install the BuildTech sticker here on top of the aluminum bed. But before we can do that, we need to remove this plastic protector that's on here. And that should just peel right off. Let's check, make sure it lines up good before we peel it. So now we need to peel this side. So we only get one shot at this, so you got to be, you know, pretty careful how you do it. I'm usually not good at this stuff, but I just need to take my time, start with one corner, and then work myself out. So I'm going to slowly pull out the back here while I'm massaging it in as I go. The point of this is that, you know, we don't want any kind of air bubbles to get trapped if you do it all at once. Like this, we're massaging the air bubbles out that way. And it looks like maybe I got it pretty good. Maybe not perfect, but looks like close enough. All right, not too bad, not too bad. Pretty happy with that. I've done a lot worse before. I think that is pretty much everything that we need to do in order to plug it in and turn it on. So hopefully we did everything right and nothing is going to, you know, go up in smoke or blow up on us. So like I said earlier, you know, go over the printer really carefully and make sure you know, pretty comfortable with everything that was done. So our power cord connects here in the back straight into the power supply, and it is fused, and this is the on and off button, and it looks like it's on right now, so let's turn it off. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the wall, and we're going to try to turn it on, but, you know, be ready to turn it off right away just in case, you know, something goes wrong. All right, so here's the moment of truth. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we have power. I don't hear anything else. Okay, looks like our display's on, everything it should be, and it does say on here, Tarantula Pro ready. Okay, now I don't hear any fans. I'm gonna see if I can figure out how to home it, and that's gonna be the moment of truth, I guess. Make sure all of our motors work and all of our end stop switches work. Now when you first do this, you know, get ready to turn it off right away just in case, you know, something goes wrong. So we're gonna click on prepare and then out of home. All right, so let's try it. Okay, so up and down, side to side, and the Y. Okay, looks like everything's working. So the switch on the Y and the X worked, and now the Z-axis switch is homing. And we adjusted it where it should not hit the bed, which it doesn't, and it's perfect. All right, well that's super cool. So it looks like all of our axes are working and all of our end stops are working. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go and preheat the bed and the nozzle. So we're gonna go to prepare and then preheat PLA, and there it goes, it starts. Now if you notice, there is a red light that glows under there, and looks like the end stop switches also glow whenever they're activated. So the bed is getting warm, and according to the display here, The nozzle is heating up and the bed is also heating up. All right, well, this is really good news. Everything seems to be working. All right, so for the next part, now that it's preheated, what we need to do is level the bed. And let's see if this printer has any kind of auto leveling function or not. So let's go to prepare. So I don't really see any kind of leveling. So the way we're gonna have to do it is manual, which is fine because I usually prefer that anyway. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna auto home again, and I think it's already there, but we'll do it again. Choose an option called disable steppers, and what that's going to do is going to release everything where it can move around. Now be careful not to push on your Z-axis because it will fall, you know, and then you won't be able to level the bed correctly. So I'm going to run this down just a little bit. So essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to level the 4 corners, and then we're going to check the middle. And I'm just using a normal printer paper here. So all right, so right when it starts grabbing, all right, it's good here. It looks like this needs to be tightened quite a lot. All right, so that's pretty good here. This needs to be tightened quite a lot also. All right, so I went around once, but we need to go at least 3 times. So we're gonna keep going and keep doing it, because once you move one corner, you know, then the other changes too. So now I'm gonna go ahead and go to the middle low. So we do have a very minor dip, looks like, in the middle. So what I do in this case is I just go to every knob and I churn it about the same amount, like a quarter churn. And now I can feel the middle. So a quarter churn was a little too much, so I'm going to go back, you know, about 1/8 of a churn, and that feels perfect. So it should be pretty good all the way around. All right, so let's load up our sample filament here. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but this printer did not come with any kind of spool holder. So to put in filament, it's quite a simple process. We're just going to go in here into this hole, and then we're going to push on this knob, feed it right in there. I'm going to raise this a little bit so we can see a little better. So I'm pushing it through, and it's going through the PTFE tubing down into the hot end. So now I got some resistance, and I'm pushing it more, and we should be coming out the bottom, and it looks like we are. And that should be good right there. All right, so finally we get to see what is on this SD card. So hopefully they have some kind of models included that we can start off with. Our SD card just plugs right in here, and it actually clicks in there. So we're gonna choose print from SD card, and it actually does have a file called test. All right, so the machine is preheating, and we should start printing, I guess, here shortly. I'm gonna grab my GoPro and see if we can capture some of this. All right, and it started, and it seems like everything is okay. I'm not sure exactly what it's printing for us. Looks like we have a little booger over there. I'll just leave it alone. But yeah, overall it looks pretty good, and it's printing something quite large. So hopefully that sample of PLA there is enough to print whatever it's printing. In any case, we'll see what it is, and this will be the first test for this printer. And so far I'm pretty happy because I don't see anything wrong or anything going wrong. Everything seems to be operating very well. So here you guys can see what the UI looks like. So it's a quite simple looking UI, and obviously you operate it with this knob and then click it to choose what you want. So let's see, we do probably, yes, so we do have some options while we're printing here. We can pause, stop the print, do some controls, do some tuning. Tuning lets you adjust the speed, the temperature of the bed and the nozzle, the fan speed, and the flow. So you got pretty good controls here. So I guess this file is called support G-code. So support for what? I have no idea. We'll find out shortly here. So I'm just gonna let it print, and I'll update you guys as what's actually getting printed. All right, so this thing is boogieing along and building this, whatever that is. But what's happening now is we're almost running out of filament. As you can see here, we got only a little bit left. So what I'm thinking is I got another roll here of white PLA, and I want it to finish because I'm kind of curious now what it is. So I'm thinking about pausing it and then pulling the rest of that out and then putting the new filament in, and that should be enough hopefully to finish this, because it is getting there, but it's only looks like a quarter of the way. So all right, so we're gonna go to pause print. All right, so it's working on the infill. Let's pause it. Pause in the best place, but it's not terrible. Pulled out the old filament, and I'm going to put this new one in there now. All right, so I jammed it in there, so hopefully that'll work. Let's go ahead and click resume print here, and there it goes. We do have this huge blob over here though. Maybe I should cut it off with something. All right, so I was able to grab a knife and chop it off. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be all right. And whatever this thing is, it kind of almost looks like a spool holder, so maybe this is good that we are continuing with this print, but I guess I wish I would have printed it black though. No, that's all right. We'll see what it is. Alright guys, so our print is done and it took 3 hours and 19 minutes. So, and it looks like a spool holder. So I guess it's good that we went ahead and printed this. So I know this ain't gonna be too easy to get off because I think I was way too close to the bed here, or a little closer than I should have been. So probably I need to get some kind of knife or something and slowly work this thing out. So it's actually not too bad. I just started putting this knife in there and it started coming up quite easy. And there we go. Alright, so it's definitely a spool holder, but how does it mount? You can guys tell where I changed the filament to the other one. It's a different color. But overall it finished, and I'm going to clean it up and see how this thing can be maybe installed. Alright, so our bracket is cleaned up. So I'm guessing it's going to have to go somewhere over here. So it looks like it can't go here because there's not enough room. And it can't really go like that. It doesn't really sit like it's supposed to, and it's in the wrong place. Let's see. How else can this, maybe like this. Let's see. Oh, okay. So it does look like it works like that. Alright, so looks like just the lip here on the top locks into the channel. And there we go, we got a little spool holder. Alright, well maybe there's hope here. So I'm thinking we need to put it way back there so that it's out of the way of everything. I gotta be careful with my little wire here. Alright, and that seems like right behind the motor here is the perfect place for it. Now let's see if our little spool will fit on here. Wow, look at that. Alright, so it does come with a spool holder. You just have to print it out yourself. Well, that's pretty cool. I guess white doesn't look too bad here. We might as well just keep it that color. Alright, so far everything is turning out good. The printer's running. There seems to be no issues with anything. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to slice my own prints. And I'll print something like a benchy and also a little calibration cube. And maybe a few other things. And we can see what kind of quality this printer prints. Alright, so the calibration cube is finished. Let's see if we can just pop it off here. Coming off. There we go. Alright, now bottom's pretty good. I think maybe I'm not close enough to the bed a little bit. That's what it looks like, but other than that, the cube actually looks really good. So there is a little bit of discoloring right here, but that's just discoloring because if you look at the reflections here, you can see that, you know, the print's fine. So something in the filament most likely. But other than that, it actually turned out way better than I thought it was going to. Like all the letters are clear and the layer bonding seemed really good. And this is a 0.16 layer height. And this is the top here. Also very nice. So yeah, I don't know. This printer seems to have what it takes to do some good prints. Alright, well that's really promising. So I'm going to go ahead and print a bunch of other things and we'll take a closer look at it. Alright guys, so I printed quite a few things as you can see, and I'm actually quite pleased with how all the prints came out of this printer. So we already took a closer look at the calibration cube. The next thing I actually printed was a 3D benchy, but that one right there was not the first one. The first one is right here and there was an issue. So the issue with this 3D benchy here was actually quite severe, and if you look here on the top on the chimney, you can see how it's not round but it's like oval. And same thing for the little one back here. You can see that it's not round but oval. And so one side actually looks nice and smooth, but the other side has quite a few weird things to it. I was a little confused about what was going on until I kind of started looking at everything and I realized that the belts were too loose. So I think what happened was once I tightened them up, they seemed they were tight. But then as time went on and they operated, the teeth that were clamped together, I think slipped a little bit out like this as it was, you know, kept pulling on it and, you know, relieved some tension and caused the belts to be loose. So after I tightened the belts, this is the benchy that came out, and this one is much nicer. Now you can see the little diagonal lines in the body there, and that's from the stepper motors. But this benchy, I would say that definitely on the better side of benchies that I print usually. So there is noise in the print a bit, but it's quite fine, so it's not terrible. You can see right there in the shadows. But our circles are round now, and so that's what made me realize it was the belt issue. But if you notice the overhangs, they're actually very nice. And you can tell there's not much droopage at all. And I think the dual fan setup here does an excellent job of cooling. So after I got the benchy looking really nice, I knew that this printer would do good after this. So I wanted to print something a little bit more interesting and functional, and I printed this little clip here. So this is actually a functional clip that prints in 2 pieces. and then they just kind of snap together. So this piece snaps to this bigger piece, and it actually works like a clip, and there's a spring action. So you guys can see the detail even in the lettering here, and the print quality is excellent in my opinion. So I can't really complain. All the details came out really good, and the layer bonding seems to be excellent also because it's quite strong. The finish is smooth and quite pleasing to look at, especially here on this red. So very cool. So after the clip, I wanted to print something bigger that had more detail and just more mass to it. So this is where this piggy comes in. And plus the color that he's printed in, we can really see the details here of the way the layers are sitting. Now there is discoloring in the print itself, and that is the filament. This filament here is definitely not reliable with color, but overall it looks pretty awesome because it does have a pretty nice shine to it. And here on this back we can see where the seam is, and it goes up and all the way through his ear there. So the printer did an excellent job of printing this thing. The light there, how it flows over the print, it really looks great. So very pleased of how this print came out. So this is supposed to be some kind of piggy bank, and you throw your coins in there, and his nose there. There's supposed to be a cap here, and it does need some support. This is why there's some stringing here. But I just printed it just for the sake of the model here, and I scaled it down because it is supposed to be quite a bit bigger, you know, in order to fit the quarters in there. So I'm very happy to see that this printer really has the capability of making these kind of prints. And so for the last print, I wanted to print spiralized mode, and that's just one layer all the way around. And you can see this little vase thing here is quite unique. When you print in spiralized, you can really see how well the walls are layered together. And as you can see here, this thing looks phenomenal. And so we do have a color shift to a more goldy look to the top, so quite unique and pretty cool looking. So yeah, this printer is impressive, and you know, being a budget printer, you don't have to pay a lot to have a quality printer. So overall, I would have to say that this printer was a fun project and definitely a learning experience, especially if you've never put a printer together before from scratch like this. You really get to understand how everything works and operates. Now, do I think this printer is for everyone? No, not really, because this does take some patience. And not only that, you kind of have to be a little bit inclined towards mechanical things like this, I guess, to even understand how to put something together like this. So if you're the kind of person that likes kits like this and enjoys putting them together, this is a great option here. And you won't be disappointed after you put it together because the print quality here speaks for itself. Now, if you're the kind of person that is not able to do something like this, then I recommend looking at other printers that Tevo has to offer that are already pre-assembled or have very minimal assembly required. So overall, it's a great printer. There is a few things that feel a little bit dated, which is this screen here not being touchscreen, but that's really not a big deal. I love how they have the full-size SD card. That's very convenient. And another feature that this printer is missing, a filament detector. And the only reason you would want that is if your filament breaks or, you know, ends, the printer won't continue printing but stop. But all in all, I have to give this thing a thumbs up for what it is and what it has to offer. And if you want to learn about 3D printers more, really get to understand how everything works and get your hands dirty with, you know, putting all the parts together, this thing is a great option. Alright guys, well hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, then hit that like button. If you want to pick up this printer, I'm going to have some links in the description, so check that out. Also, if you enjoyed videos like this, I got a lot more 3D printing videos on this channel and a lot more to come. So if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button to see more. And if you made it to the end and watched the whole thing, I just want to say thank you. It means a lot. So thumbs up for you. Alright guys, well thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.